Hi everyone, welcome to today's tutorial. In this tutorial, we are going to be looking at ICT3612 Advanced Internet Programming. So I have the requirement here for assignment 4. So I believe we've gone through this, but let's go through it together quickly. So it says for assignment 4, you are expected to complete 4 tasks containing programming exercises and upload to the web server. You should submit your assignment 4 on the assessment portal on the set date. So we are going to have from task 1 to task 4, it says to create .php files and then .txt files, where we are going to show the output of our code, the code that we wrote in an iframe. So it says to also include a page, create a page names index.php just after the body tag and include the following line of PHP code, sorry. So we are going to include this code. This menu.inc file is going to have our navigation URLs. So now making your assignment 4 available for marking, this section has to do with hosting. It involves using of the free web hosting platform. We have infinityfree.net or 000webhost.com. As at the time of this recording, I doubt 000webhost still supports free hosting. But we'll see about that when we get to the hosting section. So it says transfer your PHP and .txt file to your website. So basically this section talks about hosting, and then here it talks about creating the iframe to show the code that you wrote, your PHP code, so that it's going to be appearing on all pages. So assignment 4 submission, it says to create a folder named your student name, student number, student initial on your PC. Provide the student name number in a folder. So we will start by creating a folder with this format. So we are going to create url.txt in our project, which is going to contain the URL to our hosted project so that they can mark it online. So we are going to have db.txt that's going to contain the credentials to log into our database, and then we are going to have login details.txt, which is going to contain the username and password to log into our web server that we hosted our application in, or our hosting provider profile. So we zip the project using WinZip or WinRAR or whatever. So the rest of the instructions are pretty straightforward. So it says you are not allowed to use any PHP frameworks or software, including AI tools. We are not going to use that, obviously. We are going to code using raw PHP. So make use of comments, all tasks and some stacks. We produce output of some sort on the screen. First consider the output produced, and then look at the code to see how the output was produced. So when the task has a subtask, mark it as A and B, label the task clearly in the output. So yeah, so you can carefully go through all the instructions line by line. I've already done that, so I'm just going to head over to the first task. So we've been given this entity relationship diagram. So the task 1A says explain briefly what each table represents. That is, the entity it represents. List all the primary and foreign keys for each table for 10 marks. So first thing first, we are going to head over to our local C drive. We go to, I already have XAMPP installed. So when you have XAMPP installed, you have to start your Apache, and then you have to start your MySQL. You go to your local C drive, you are going to have a XAMPP folder. In the XAMPP folder, you are going to have the htdocs folder. So in here, you can create all the files and folders for your project. So the first thing first, I'm going to create a new folder. So let's assume my student number is 1234567 underscore student surname. Let's assume my surname is John, and then my initials is AB, something like that. So I open the folder. I'm inside the folder now. So what do I do here? So the first thing first, I'm going to create some files. Make sure that the extension for your files are showing. So how you do that, you go to the View tab here, Show, and then make sure you check File Name and Extension. So this is the way to create proper files. So for instance, let's assume I want to create a new file. I'll start by saying New text document. In this instance, let's assume I want to change this text document to a PHP file. It's going to be showing the extension here, .txt, when you click on Show File Name Extension. So instead of .txt, I'm going to change this to PHP, and then I select yes. You can see that the file has been changed. So like this, you can create proper files in your application. Let's assume I want to create menu.inc file. Menu dot, instead of txt for text file, I'm going to change that to inc. So I have that. So the IDE of choice that I use is Visual Studio Code. So for instance, if you are interested in using Visual Studio Code, you can always download it online. All you just need to do is to go to your favorite browser and set download Visual Studio Code, and you can always get the download from the very first link that you have here from so you all are likely using Windows, so you select the Windows. If you are using Linux or Mac, you select it as appropriate. All you just need to do is to click on next all the way down, and then you're gonna have Visual Studio Code installed in your machine. So I'm going to right click in my folder here, show more option. I had the option when installing Visual Studio Code. I checked the option to always include Visual Studio in context menu. So when you are installing your Visual Studio, make sure to check that as well, so that you're gonna have this option when you show your context menu. So it's just a checkbox when you are trying to install Visual Studio Code. It's going to ask whether to include Visual Studio Code in your context menu. So you check that to have this option. So when I right click and then I say open with code, so it will open in my Visual Studio Code, as you can see here. So I have my menu.index.php and then my menu.inc file here. So in my index.php, I'm just going to open the PHP block here. So while reading the requirement, we've been asked to create some files. One of them is we're gonna have a first file that's going to display our details. Let's call that details.php. So we're gonna have another file that's going to be called db.txt, which is going to contain our database credentials. We're going to have url.txt. We are going to have login details. .txt. Since we are going to start with tax 1 as well, we're going to have all the files for the tax1.php like that. So these are you create a file. Either you use this button here, or you right click and say create a new file. You're going to have tax2.php, tax3, and tax4. So everything starts from the index, right? So the index is the first file that is going to get run whenever you try to run your PHP application. So what are we doing for the first in the PHP file, in the index.php? The first thing is to get the action. So what action did the user make? Is it a GET request or is it a POST request? So we need to get that action and process that action. So after getting the action, we process the action. So how do we get the action? So we're gonna use an if statement. If is set, if a variable is true, $action. If this variable is true, otherwise if the variable $action is not true, if $action is set, we want to get an action key that has the key of action. So if that is not set, if $action is not set, we want to create a variable called $action that gets an action key with a string of action. So this is how we get the request. So after getting the request, the next thing is to post the request. You can use an if statement or a switch statement, any one that you like. In my instance, I'm just going to continue with the if statement for processing the action. So you want to check what the value of $action is. If $action is index, we want to show a file which is details.php. Details.php. So sometimes when you are trying to get the action key from line 5 and line 7, you usually get the undefined index error. So to eliminate that error, just put the @ sign here just before the action variable. So if it's not action, so we're gonna use else if to check for all the other conditions as well. If action is equals to task 1, then we are going to include our PHP file that we created, which is task1.php. So like that, we are going to repeat the same process for task 2, task 3, task 4. Shift Alt down key, we duplicate that line. Else if action equals to task 2, we want to include task 2. Else if Shift Alt down key, let me remove this trailing bracket. If it is task 3, we want to include task3.php. Alt down key, remove this trailing bracket. If it is task 4, you want to include the file task4.php. If it's not any of those, that's when it comes to the else part. You still want to include the file details.php. So when we set the value of $action from this part here, then the if statement is going to check what was saved in $action variable, and it will display any of these pages according to what it gets as the value of $action from here. So when the page starts initially, it's going to come to the else part because no action is set. We just run the index. We just run the index.php. $action key here is going to be null. There will be nothing there. If it said $action is not set when the page is loading for the first time. So it's going to come to this else part. So, and then at the end of running this line 7, $action here is going to be null. So it's going to check if $action is equals to index string. That is not true. It's obviously not true here. It's not true here. It's not true here. It's not true here as well. So it's going to come to the else part and just display details.php. So now in details.php, it is currently empty. We have to add something in details.php. Otherwise, we are going to be seeing an empty page in our web. So we'll start by opening a PHP block, which is what we have been doing. Same thing we did in the index.php. Or we can still make it a combination of HTML and PHP. So we can open an HTML block. So let's assume we name this ICT36 and then say details or whatever you want to set as the title. So in the body tag, we are going to open a PHP block. So you can open a PHP block in any place in the HTML. Let me just do shift tab here. So the first thing that we want to do is to include the menu. include the menu. So the menu is needed for navigation, for navigating from one HTML from one PHP page to the other, or HTML page as you might have. So we have include menu.inc file. So currently, if you look at the menu.inc file, it is currently empty. So this menu.imc file is going to have our navigation. So I'm just going to paste our navigation here. So basically, what do we have here? So we are having index as the menu here. We have tax 1 as another menu here, tax 2, tax 3, tax 4. And then we have a break tag to just create some empty lines after that. So what does this say? This is setting an action key to be equals to index. So when you click on index, it will come to the index.php file here. It is getting a key that has, it is getting an action key. So what you set as the action key here in the menu.inc file is index, as you have here. So when you press the index.php file, when you press the index link, so this line here is going to be saving index. It's going to be having index. So when you, same thing for tax 1. When you click on the link for tax 1, the action key here is going to be having tax 1 like this. So what this means is that when the index file processes it, this line is going to be having tax 1. So when $action is equals to tax 1, which is this if statement block, you know that it's going to show tax1.php, and so on and so forth. Same thing, tax 2, same thing, tax 3. The action key, you set it to tax 3, action key, you set it to a string of tax 4, and so on and so forth. Now that navigation is out of the way, let's go back to, so we have that. It's going to include the menu like that. So after including the menu, you don't want to show only the menu alone. You want to include your student details as well. So still inside the PHP block, or if you want to create an HTML, you can just go ahead. But I'll just continue with the PHP block. Let's assume I have an echo statement here. So in here, I'm going to have an h3 tag. You can put HTML tag in double quotes in PHP. We know that. So you are going to put your student name here. Let's assume your student name is John Doe. So you're gonna add your student number, Shift, Alt, and down key. That's how you get that. Let's assume your student number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you can just say semester 2025 here. So we have that. So without doing anything else, the next thing now is to set up a virtual host so that we run this application and see the output that is giving us. So to create a virtual host, the first thing first, we are going to go to this location in our computer, C XAMPP Apache conf extra folder. So without doing clicking and clicking for a long time, so we can just open any of our file explorer. In the address bar here, you can just paste that link here. So this is going to take us to our XAMPP Apache configuration extra folder. So you want to edit this file, which is httpd-vos-conf. So show more option, open with code. You want to open with Visual Studio Code. So what you want to do is that you are going to have this default virtual host set. If there's a pound sign in front of it, it's commented out. So if you want to uncomment it, you just press Ctrl//. It's already uncommented like that. So what you need is the document root and the server name. So these other options that you have here, you don't need them. So you can see in my instance, I've already added some virtual hosts for some other application that I worked on in the past. So in your instance, you are going to add yours on a new line without comments. So um, the server admin, let me undo that. So we don't need the server name. We don't need the server admin. We only need the server name and the document root. Sorry. So the document root is going to be the root of the project. So your project is in this folder path, is in your htdocs, and then you created a file 12345 John AB, which is your name. So this is your document root. You just click on the address bar here, you copy the link, and then you want to paste that in double quotes as your document root, because that's the root of your application. So the next thing here is the name. So whatever name that you're using, make sure that you use .localhost. Let's assume your name is John. So you say john.localhost. This is a proper host name. So anytime that you load up john.localhost in your web browser, it's going to load up your file that you have in this document root, which is your location for your project. So the next thing is to go to the second location, which is C Windows System 32 drivers etc. So you go to this location. So this is, in this location, we are going to edit the host file of our operating system. So you are going to see this file here, hosts. So right click on it, show more option, open with code. So we have this host file here. There are different hosts that has already been set in the past for my application here. So I'm just going to create a new one. I'm going to create a new host. So it's going to be without any pound sign, right? 127, no pound sign in front. 127.0.0.1, which is localhost, and then your server name is john.localhost, which is what you have already set from here. So you have john.localhost here. That's what you are going to put in your host file as well. You save this host file. So in order to make any changes in this host file, you need admin privileges. So in the bottom right corner here of your VS Code, which your Visual Studio Code, you click on overwrite, and then you click on overwrite as admin. So it's going to bring the dialog box to confirm the changes, and then you click on yes. So the host file has been saved like that. So by doing these two steps, setting this up in the httpd vhost.conf file and putting the server name in the host file, so you have already completed setting up your virtual host. The next thing is to restart your XAMPP. So you have to stop Apache and stop MySQL. So you have to start Apache again and then start MySQL. So we have that. So after doing that, then we can go to our browser now, and then in our browser we can now say john.localhost. So we have it. So this is our application now. So what we have showing here now is the details.php file. So if we go to tax 1, you can see tax 1 is empty, tax 2 is empty, tax 4 is empty. So if you click on index all the time is going to load up the details.php file. You can see the action here. It says action equals index. That is what you get in your PHP file. If you go to your index.php, that's what you get from this line. When action is equals to index, is going to show the details.php file. So let's go to tax 1a. So in here, I'm going to open a PHP block. Obviously, all the time you have to be including the menu, because from The menu.inc file allow you to navigate between pages from one page to the other. So you are going to create a comment here and say tax 1A. So the solution to tax 1A, you have it here. So we have so to collapse the explorer here, you can always press Ctrl B on your keyboard. So artist contains the data about artists. Its primary key is artist ID that uniquely identify each artist. So you put a two break sign to go to the next one. Album, we have the album entity as well. Contains data about albums belonging to an artist. Its primary key is album ID that uniquely identify each album. It has artist ID foreign key that references the artist table. We also have the track, contains the data about tracks in an album. Its primary key is track ID that uniquely identifies each track. It has album ID foreign key that references the album table. So for the artist, the primary key there is the artist ID. In the artist table, the foreign key there, there are no foreign key in the artist table. You can see here we only have the artist ID, which is the primary key, and artist name, no foreign key. So in the album, we have the album as the primary key and artist ID as the foreign key. You can see that clearly here. Artist ID that is referencing the artist table. So same thing in the track, we have the primary key, which is track ID, and then the foreign key, which is album ID. So we go to 1B. It says create a diagram for a database to keep track of modules and lecturers working in these modules. Each lecturer can be assigned to several modules in multiple roles. For example, primary lecturer, secondary lecturer, moderator. So this is for 10 marks. So what are we asked to do? We've been asked to create a diagram for a database to keep track of modules and lecturers working in these modules. So to do that, I've just given us a quick solution here. So basically we are going to create a database, and in that database we are going to have some tables with their relationship. So tax 1B, so I'm just going to add that in a comment here. I open multi-line comment and close that. So now line 22 here says create database. This is how you create a database. Create database modules DB. Use the database that you created, modules DB. So we are going to have a modules table that is going to contain the module ID, and then that's going to have the module name. So in here, instead of having the module ID to be an integer, we can make it to be a varchar and make that to be 7, as in ICT3612. We can do that. So we have the modules table that is going to contain details about the modules. So we have the lecturer roles table that is going to have the role ID and the role name. The role name can be primary lecturer, secondary lecturer, or moderator according to the question. So we are going to have the lecturer table as well. So we have the lecturer ID, and then we are going to have the lecturer name. So after that, we are going to have the module lecturer, which is going to have the details about modules and the lecturer that is handling those modules. So module lecturer, we are going to have the ID, which is the primary key, the module ID, which is going to be the module ID supposed to be varchar 7, because the module ID must have the same type as this, which is the module ID in the modules table. So we have the lecturer ID, which is going to represent the lecturer that is handling the module. Either the lecturer is a primary lecturer, secondary lecturer, or moderator. So we are going to have the role ID that is going to help us to know which of this role is that lecturer is performing in that module, either primary lecturer, secondary lecturer, or moderator. And then the module ID, lecturer ID, and role ID are all foreign keys. So the primary key of the table is the ID column here. So foreign key module ID references the modules table module ID, which is this modules table module ID. Same thing for the lecturer ID that references the lecturer table lecturer ID, not DI, ID. And then lastly, for the role ID column, which is this column, references the lecturer roles role ID. So now that we have this table, the next thing is to go to our database and run this SQL statement. So we go to our browser and then type in localhost/phpMyAdmin. So our database loads up. So we go to SQL. We want to go to SQL here, and then we paste in that SQL. We confirm that there are no errors in the SQL. So there's an error here on line 11. Let's remove this comment. I was just using this to explain to us. So after that, are there any other errors? I don't think we have any errors. So we press Ctrl Enter on our keyboard to run the SQL statement. So we have an error here that says incorrect colon specifier for module ID. So let's look at that. Incorrect column specifier for module ID, varchar 7. So back here, so now that we said the module ID is going to be variable character and then it's going to be 7, we don't need the auto increment here because the auto increment, with auto increment, the database is the one that's going to be generating the primary keys, right? So we don't need that. So let's copy that again and go to SQL here. Control Enter. So the database gets created successfully. So let's copy this query and replace it with this that we had in our code base. So I had an error because of this comment that I added here. It gave me an error. So but I quickly removed it. So I'm going to remove that and paste in the right SQL statement. So now that this table has been created, you can see it here. It has been created on the side here, modules DB. So we have it here, lecturer, lecturer roles, module, module lecturer. So in the upper right corner here, I don't know if you can see that on your side, but let me just try to reduce my browser window a little. So you want to click on more, go to more. After clicking on database, go to more and then click on designer. So in the designer window, you can see the tables here created, all linked with their primary keys and foreign keys respectively. So the line connecting the tables shows their shows the referential integrities and denotes that the table are connected together using primary keys and foreign keys. So we use a snipping tool. Take a snipping tool, take a screen grab of this. You copy it, you click on copy here, and then you paste this this picture in your folder. You can paste it here. Okay, it's not pasting, but you can go to your pictures and screenshots in your file explorer. So here's the picture. So you can just copy the picture and then paste it in your, you can cut it, in fact, and paste here. You can say tax1b.png. So in your project, you can create an image section here just below this echo image. So the name of the file is going to be tax1b.png. I think it's a PNG file, if I'm not mistaken, tax1b.png. So you save that. You go to your page, tax1. So we have this here, not showing up. I said tax1, tax1b. So here it is. So this answers it for tax1. So we head over to tax2. Tax2 says to refer to the diagram in tax1A, create a database with 3 tables as illustrated in the diagram. So tax1A, we've been asked to create a database that has all these tables and the relationships. Populate the tables with realistic data with at least 5 rows of data in each table. Note that the SQL data type for each column is not given in the diagram, so you have to decide on this aspect. Write PHP code to connect to the database and display the content of all 3 database tables in 3 different HTML tables on the web page. So quickly, we're gonna head over to our tax2.php file, which I have here, tax2.php. So open the PHP block. Just like we did for tax1, the first thing is to include the menu. So at the end of that, so we have to paste the copy, the SQL statement that creates the table, that creates the database, the tables, and the relationships. We have to provide that as well. So just like we did in tax1, so music album DB is the table, that is the database we are creating here. Create database, music album DB, use music album DB. So we want to create the artist table. So the artist table is going to have the artist ID, which is going to have the artist ID, the first name, the last name, and then the stage name. So we are going to have the album table that's going to have the album ID, the album title, the album date, number of tracks, artist ID, which is a foreign key. So we specify the foreign key relationship here. Same thing, we're going to have the tracks. The track is going to have the ID, which is auto incremented, the track number, the track title, the track duration, the album ID that the track belongs to, and then we specify that the album ID is the foreign key. So without wasting much time, we take the SQL statement, we go to our database. We already had our database open from here. So we want to create a new database, right? So we let's click the home logo of phpMyAdmin. You go to the SQL tab, you paste in that SQL statement, confirm that there are no errors, and then you press Ctrl Enter on your keyboard. So the database is created successfully. So if you go to more and then you go to designer, you can see that the tables have already been created and they are linked as appropriately. So the next thing now is to populate the database with some real data. So you can always get album tracks and the artist. You can always get that online. Just look for your favorite artist, their album and the tracks. You just add some data here in your database. So I've added some 3 artists in the database, aka Black Coffee and Shoma Josie. The albums by these artists, I've added them here, all linked together. So we have the tracks here. So for each of the albums, I've only added 5 tracks. So in this table, we have about 14 records. So in your own implementation, you can add all the tracks. Maybe if they are 15 in number, you can add all 15. If they are 10 or 12 or 13. So the next thing is to write code that get all those data from our database and display them in HTML table on our web page. So in order to do that, we already have a PHP block here in tax2.php. So I'm going to create an HTML block by saying HTML5 here. So it creates the HTML5, and then in here I'm going to paste the PHP block. So just like we had for details.php, the title here is just going to have I can just say ICT3612 tax 2. You can also do the same thing for tax 1 if you wish, but it's not absolutely necessary. If you select the whole of tax 1, you create an HTML block, and then you say in the title you say ICT3612 tax 1, and in here you paste the HTML block. They are both the same. So because I'm going to add some styling for the tables, that's why I had to add this. So in the head section here, I'm going to add a style rule here. So for all the table data, table header, and table data and table itself, I want to add 1 pixel solid black. So for all the labels, I want them to have 150 width, flow to the left, text align to the right. So those are the 2 simple style rules that I'm going to have. So the first thing first is to connect to the database, right? So in our PHP block, we want to connect to the database, because in order to query data from the database, you must be connected to the database. So to connect to the database, we specify the $DSN, which is the data source network. MySQL host is equals to localhost, and then the DB name is music album db. The username is root, and then the password is empty. So we connect using the PDO object by passing the data source network username and then the password. So $connect here is saving the connection to connection to our database. So to display the data, we create an echo statement, and inside it we open a table. The static part, we put it in the echo statement, which is the table. We are going to have a table row. In the table row, we are going to have table header. One table header for the artist ID, another table header for the artist name, another table header for the artist surname, another table, and the last table header for the artist stage name. We close the table row. In there, we have a for each statement. So after the table has been created, we create the database. Connect, which is the variable that is storing our database connection. Using the query method, we put a statement here, select star from the artist table. Select star from the artist table, which is the same table that we have in our database, the artist table. We want to get the artist ID, first name, last name, and stage name. So for each artist as A, we want to get the artist ID column, artist ID name column, artist surname column, artist stage name column, and then we are saving it in all these variables: ID, name, surname, stage name. And then after getting the values in the PHP code, we display it out with the echo statement and the HTML tag. We create a table row, open a table row, close a table row, and the table row, we have a table data for the ID. We have another table data for the name, another table data for the surname, and then last table data for the stage name, that match all the 4 table headers that we have here. At the end of the day, we close the table tag which we had open on line 54 here. So if we save that, if we go to our page and head over to tax 2 and run that, so we have an error that says undefined variable G. I think I used variable A here. I'm using G in the loop. So this is supposed to be $A. I don't know how I missed that. So we save that. Refresh again. So it's a good thing that we are seeing all these errors so that we know what's the problem when we write code and then we are not getting the proper output. So it says here undefined index artist name on line 63. If we go to our line 63, which is this line, artist name here is wrong. So in a nutshell, what that means is that in our database, the artist name column is artist first name, artist last name. Is not artist name like this. So it's supposed to be artist first name, artist last name, and then I think artist stage name matches what we have. Artist stage name, it matches it. We save that. So we have that for our. So just like we did for the artists, I've already added the population for the album as well. We created the static table. The static table, we open the table tag, we close the table tag in an echo statement. In the first echo statement, we put the table rows. We specify the table headers and the table row, album ID, title, date, number of tracks. So we created the database for the albums. So in here, we have all the list of albums. We use a for each loop to loop through the list. So for each albums as $A, the artist ID column from the database, $A, the album title column from the database, and then we save them in title, date, and number of tracks respectively, and then we echo them in the echo statement. Same thing for the tracks as well. We open the table, we close the table, we query the tracks table from the database, we loop through the tracks table, and then we display out the data in the table row for each of the records. So if we go to our table, so you have it here. So we have the album ID, and then so now one thing that you'll be wondering is how can we populate the albums here for all of these tracks that we have here. So it's not the most efficient way, right? But because it caused performance issues to be querying the database in loops, but then we can use that to achieve this task. So all you just need to do is to just call the database additionally here using the connection variable, which is connect. You pass in a query here. You want to say select album name from album table where album ID column equal to a particular ID. So we have not gotten the album ID here from the tracks table. Remember that in our tracks table we have this column here which represent the album ID. We haven't gotten that and saved that in a variable. So I'm talking about this last column here. So we have to get that. So let's assume I have that on line 105 here. Let's assume I create album ID as a column here. So that's going to be $T, and then the name of the column is album ID from the database like that. So we use this $album ID. You want to pass it in here. So at the end of the loop, you have to say fetch column. Fetch column here is just going to help you to retrieve one column and one data. In a nutshell, it helps you to get only the cell that has the album name. So we save that. We go to our page and refresh. So we have an error on line 110, fetch colon on bool. So if you check the issue here, I just run the SQL statement. So if you come across errors like this, all you just need to do is to run the SQL statement. You run it in your database. You can always go to your database and run the SQL statement. So if you come here, let's assume you put in 1 here, for instance, and then if you press Ctrl Enter here, you can see here unknown column album name in the field list. So this is supposed to be album title. It's supposed to be album title, not album name, because when you go to the albums table, if you open the albums table in a new tab, that column that you are looking for is actually album title, not album name. So if you press Ctrl Enter here, so you're gonna get that. So that solves our problem here. In here, we just need to change this name to title. And then I notice an error here. Instead of album ID, I'm saying artist ID here, which is very wrong. It's supposed to be album ID. So if we go to our page and refresh, you can see we have it there. So that takes us to the next part of. So from the question, we're also given the task to add an artist, edit an album, and delete a track. So firstly, we are going to create the forms to perform all these operations. To start with, that is what we have from the requirements that we have here. So we have the form to add the artist. I will just put 2 breakpoints here. 2 HTML statements rather. So in an echo tag, in an echo statement, we have the form. So the form have an action. For the action key, we are specifying a value of query. The method is post. So we have the label for the name, the label and text box for the surname, the label and text box for the stage name. And then we have a submit button that has a name attribute that we call add artist. Same thing for the edit album. In order to edit an album, we need to know the album that we want to edit. So I use the same format as in the previous form. I created a form in an echo statement. The action is also query. The method is post, obviously. And then in here, I have a div tag. I have a label, a select list. The select list is member name. The ID is also member name. It is required. You have to select an option. It has a default option that says choose an album. It's supposed to. So we are querying the database. We create a variable here, ABS albums connect query select star from album order by the album title. For each of the albums that we have on the database, we are adding an option into the select list. Option, the value, you have to open a single quote and then use a double quote to open and close the PHP block here. We specify the album ID in the value field and then the title in the text field, in the text area. So we close the select list, we close the div, and then we have the album date, the number of tracks, and then the submit button that has a name of update album. So lastly, we have the one for deleting the track as well. So I use the same method of querying that I did for the previous form. Get all the tracks by their title, add them into the select list as different options, close the select list, close the div tag, and then I have the button here that has a name of the list track. So one thing that you'll note here is that all the form have an action of query. So this query string is what we are going to handle in our index.php. So it follows that, let's copy this. It follows that we are going to get where action is equals to query. So in order to know which of the button is selected, so currently we want to handle the first form, which is the form to add an artist. So we are going to use this name here, the name of the button. Obviously, all these actions are going to fire when the user click a button. When the user click buttons like add artist, update album, delete track. So things are not just going to work just out of the box like that. Somebody has to click a button. So we are trying to get that event here in our index.php. So we are going to say if is set $_post, we use the post array, add artist. So basically what these lines means that if the add artist button is clicked, we know that obviously. So the first thing is to get all the fields. So we get all the fields by their name property, name, surname, stg name, which is the names for all the name attribute for all the form fields, name, surname, stg name. So insert into, we connect to the database. So after performing the insert query that we have here is a short form of insert into artist. We specify the values. This is the ID column, the artist first name column, the artist surname column, and the artist stage name column as we have it in our database here. So one thing that you agree with me is that this $connect variable is nowhere in the index.php file here. So the $connect variable is only in tax2.php file, which is here. We declared that variable here. So we need to move this code into a separate file and include the file into these both files. So the best way to do that is to cut this code from here. Let's create a new file here and call it connection.php. We paste that here. So we have to include that. Let's include that here. Include connection.php. So all the files have access to it there. So on line 6 here, we were supposed to get the post array. If there's no post request, we are getting a get request. So I made that error earlier. So now let's take this for a spin and see what we have. So we have this, and then we click on add artist. The artist has been added as number 4. You can see that. So we go to the next one, which is to edit the album. Edit album, we have the form here. So the name of the button for the edit album is update album. So let's copy that and go to our index.php here. Still in the query, so we have to create another if statement here. If is set $_post. You know what this line means. So the next thing is to get all the form fields. So the form fields are ID, date, and tracks successfully. So we get the ID from the form field, the date, the tracks, and then we save them in $ID, $date, $tracks respectively. And then edit, we create a variable, connect to the database using the exec method, not query. Now we want to execute an update, so we use the exec. If you want to delete, you also use the exec. So now, update album, set album date equals to date, number of tracks equals to tracks, where album ID is the album ID. So let's take that for a spin. So we choose an album. Let's assume we want to edit Pieces of Me. Now the date was 2015 09 04, and then the number of tracks is 10. So undefined index of ID on line 32, we got that error. So ID here is undefined. Why do we have that? I can't seem to find any error, but let's change this to album ID. Name, the name field we have changed to album ID. In here too, we change to album ID. So we have that. Okay, the update just went through. Now the problem is that we use the ID field. ID is because of the naming that we use for the ID select list here. That's why we are having that issue. So use another name that is not ID. So we go to the delete part. Good part in this one, we are not setting the name attribute to ID. So for the name attribute, we are setting it to delete track. So the name of the delete button is delete track. Let's copy that and undo it in the So we write the query to perform the deletion from the database. You can copy here. So that's going to be delete from tracks, which is the name of the table. Let's confirm the name of the table again. Tracks. Where ID, where the ID column let's confirm again, this ID column, which is the primary key, where the ID column is equals to what we have saved in ID. If that is successful, you include tags 2. Let's take that for a spin. We go to the page. Let's delete one of the tracks. Let's delete congratulate. The track has been deleted. Let's confirm. Congratulate is no longer in the database. So it has been deleted successfully. So that takes us to the last part of task 2. It says there must be a form with 5 radio buttons where the user can choose to view the results of one of 5 different select queries at a time. The label of each button must be the matching SQL. The result of the queries must be displayed with the radio buttons independent of other HTML tables on the web page. Details of these 5 select queries are given below. The first select query must make use of order by clause. The second must make use of the like operator. The third must make use of an inner join that joins two tables. The fourth must make use of the where clause or with the or logical operator. The fifth query must make use of the aggregate count function. You can decide on other details of these select queries. So the whole process will start by creating of the form, which I have done here. So select queries. The form has an action of query, just like the rest of the forms that we had since we've been working on this. So it has 5 radio buttons. They all have the name select query. The only difference is the value. One is for order by, like, inner join, where or, and count. And then it has a submit button that has the name of submit query. So how this is gonna work is that let's go to the page and look at what the form looks like. No, I don't want to do this. So here is what it looks like. How this is gonna work is that you click on any of the radio buttons. Let's assume order by, and then you are now going to click on the submit query button. Then that is when something is going to happen. So it's a two-way process. It's a two-step process. You have to click on any of the radio buttons and then you have to click the submit query button. So let's undo this submit query button in the index.php file. Since it is coming from the query value of the key value pair action, so we are going to say if set, just like we've been doing for the rest, $_post. So the next thing is to get the clicked radio. So the clicked radio is going to be saved which is select query, the name of the radio buttons. Select query is their name. They all have the name select query. That's what we are getting here. So we can use a switch statement or if statement. Any one that you want is suitable. So we have to get the radio buttons, the radio button that was clicked. $clicked radio. So case whereby it is the order by, the one with the value of order by, we are going to do some things and then put a break statement. Case whereby, so the switch statement is completed. Now let's create a query that uses order by. Let's save it in order by. So we are going to say connect. We make use of the connection variable query. Remember, this is a select statement, so we have to use the query method. So let's say select star from album order by album title in ascending, or in your case you can use descending, DESC. So we include the tax2.php page. So to make the output to show in our tax2.php page, so we have to write the set function here. So we're gonna say if is set $order by, which is the variable from the previous page. that is holding the results of that database operation. We use a for each loop to loop through the result in $order by for each $order by as $R, let's or $O, any variable you wish. So we are going to write an echo statement. So we are going to display all the values of the columns in the database. So I'm talking about the values of the album table. So we have the album ID column, the album title column, album date, artist ID, and artist number of tracks. We concatenate with the dot operator. We use a comma and a space to separate all the fields. $O, album title, $O. So it's all completed. Let's take that for a spin. Let's go to the page. Next to order by submit query. So you have it here, the album ID, the album name, the release date. Okay, everything is displaying on one line. So we need to put a break statement just at the end here. We concatenate with a break statement. In fact, let's add 2 breaks so that things are well spaced out. Order by submit query. So you have it there. Just like we did for the order by clause, I've done the same for the rest of the requirements as well. So for the like operation, select from album where album title like pi, as in piece of me, so PIE. So it's going to get that. Inner join, select track title album. This is another table, album table, the album title column from the album table, rename it as album name from tracks, which is where you are getting the track title from. Inner join the album table on tracks.albumid equals to the album table.albumid, where the track ID is equals to 1. The track ID obviously in the tracks table. So that's for inner join. So in here we are just getting the track title and the album name. For tracks, for only the track that has the ID of 1. In your own instance, you might remove the where clause here, where ID is equals to 1, and leave it blank so that it gets all the album name for all the tracks. So we have the where all here as well. Select track title from tracks, where track title equals to corner or album ID is equals to 3. So we have the count aggregate function here. Select count star as we are renaming the column to track count from tracks, where album ID is equals to count all the tracks, where the album ID is equals to give us the count. So to display the output for all this, we have that here. So we use the for each loop. We loop through the records. We loop through the records just like the previous one, and then we loop through the records as well. And then for this one, we are only getting just one record, so we are just going to display the record if it is available. So let's go to our page. So we want to select the like operation, for instance, and then we click on submit. So we have that. Inner join, we click on submit. So for the inner join, I think we are having a little bit of an issue. The where or, we click on submit. We have something, and then for the count, we click on submit. So that gave us an error as well. Since we are only fetching one data here, one data in a single cell, so we are going to add the fetch column clause here. So for the inner join, I think we are handling it the wrong way. So we have inner join here as the value. So in the switch statement, we are checking for inner or. So it's supposed to be inner join here. Inner join. So we save that. Let's go to our page again. Click on tax 2. Inner join. So we have this sim dope levels, and then for the counts, submit query, we have 5. So that is it for this tutorial, guys. All of the codes are what we have been going through all along. So I will see you guys in the next tutorial. So in the next tutorial, we are going to be looking extensively into the MVC design pattern. So thank you.